No scans and standing, so you can just lie on the floor, which is nice on the Friday afternoon. Not in this lesson, Philippa. Not in this lesson. Yep. Sorry. Do you know if people can leave their mats and things here over the weekend? Yes? Okay. So you can leave everything here over the weekend. So have a lie down. And so out of all the lessons that I've taught this week, this is the only one where Moshe starts with a scan. So the other one I improvised because I know that's something that you're learning, so I thought it would be of interest to do scans. But this is the lesson that Moshe gives. So if you lie on your back, feel the contact of your two heels on the ground. And notice what part of your left heel is resting on the ground and what part of the right. And is there any difference between the two in how they're contacting the floor? And now sense your two legs and the two calf muscles, and feel if there's a difference between how the two lower legs are being supported by the floor. And you could take your attention further up your body and sense the gap underneath your right knee and the space underneath your left. And again, you're observing how similar they are and if there's any difference. And then continue up to your pelvis. And notice how the weight's distributed on your pelvis. If it's in the middle of the pelvis, across the sacrum. If you feel that you take more weight on the right side or the left side. And in this fashion of comparing the two sides, just continue up from the pelvis up through your back. So you can feel the space underneath the lower back, the lumbar area. And if you've got your spine in the middle, is there a difference on both sides of your spine? At the lumbar region. And then you come in your mind to the floating ribs, the lower ribs. And you can sense how the right side, how they make contact and how on the left. And then continuing up through the spine, you can notice how the spine runs in between your two shoulder blades. And if those ribs on either side of the spine, now there might be different contact, say, with the area on the right side and on the left. And then just continue observing how your spine connects to your head, how your head is resting, and how your two arms align. And now lie on your right side. And bring your left leg on the floor in front of your right leg. And your right arms out at shoulder level. And now turn your head toward the left so that your nose comes more toward the ceiling. And you can bring your left arm into the air and just move it toward the left. And feel a comfortable place where your arm can stay. So it doesn't need to particularly stay up in the air. If you're very flexible, it will come to the floor behind you. But don't be compelled to put it on the floor. But just find somewhere where the arm can rest comfortably, because you're going to stay in that position for some time. Your arms towards the left and you're facing up as much as possible towards the ceiling. And in that position, start to purely in your mind think of the movement of how you could lift your head. So you're not doing anything, you're purely thinking of how the head lifts in this twisted. You just say that movement through your mind. And as you're thinking the movement, what effect does that have on your body? Can you feel it resonate? And then continue. We're going to continue in the imagination for some time. So now imagine that your right leg, imagine what it would be like to straighten the right leg. Sorry, the left leg, wrong leg. So the leg that's, yeah, it's the right leg. Think of straightening your right leg. And so you're not doing it at the moment, you're just thinking it. And then you're going to think of how the right leg could straighten and how you could lift the right leg into the air. So, no, right leg, the leg that you're lying on. So you're going to be all the time in that. Most of the lesson is in this twisted position. No, it does. I don't think it matters too much. So he starts off with a bend, and the first time you're imagining it, that you're straightening the right leg, but then you're imagining that the right leg is straight, and that you're going to be able to lift the right leg into the air. And then you're going to include in that image that the right leg would lift. So at the moment, you're just thinking that through, and as you're thinking through, those different components, do you get a sense of something happening with your body? And now we're going to start actually doing the movement. So explore now how you can bring your head into the air in this twisted position. You're just going to be lifting the head away from the floor, and as much as possible your nose is towards the floor. But when I did this, I thought, oh, how can I, get into that position? But looking at people here, for most of you, it's a possibility. But again, don't compromise yourself. If it's difficult to turn in that position, just do as much as you can. So doing some small movements of lifting the head. And now you're going to lengthen your right leg, and you're going to lift your head and your right leg. And you might think as you do that, think of what you did with Zoran, what's happening to your breathing? Can you lift your head and your leg and still breathe? And so in the lesson, Sheldon kind of poses the question, when is it easiest to breathe in? Or as Joram so nicely put it, to inside? Is it when you're doing the movement, or is it when you're breathing? So have the idea that you breathe in as your body's resting on the floor, and then as you lift your head and your legs, you're breathing. And then leave it and roll onto your back. And as you're lying here now, compare the two sides, the right and the left side. You might go back to noticing how the heels are lying, or you may also take your attention to the ribs and the upper back, and just notice if certain areas are now lying better or are lying more fully on the floor. And come to lie in that same position. So you roll over onto your right side, your left leg is in front, and then your left arm is somewhere comfortably behind you or towards the left. And your nose or your face is facing up towards the ceiling. And now bring the left hand behind your face. And you're going to open your elbow more out to the left. So you're not cradling the head, but your elbow is opened out towards the left. And in that configuration, you're going to lift your head as you exhale, and then return your head to the. And notice as you do that, for some of you, does your left knee come away? And if that is as a consequence of the movement, that's fine. So for now, you're just lifting the head a few times. And then you're going to continue the movement and include the legs. So the head continues moving, but you're going to lift the right leg at the same time. And feel what happens in your chest. You know, the lessons that we've been doing about making the sternum more flexible, getting more movement in your ribs. And can you breathe? Can you breathe easily, I was going to say. So can you exhale as you do the movement and then breathe in as you return to the floor? And then find a way to come back to lying back with your legs. And tune in and listen to how these movements are affecting you. And find a way to easily come back into that same configuration. You know, how can you transition? So we're going to be doing a lot of transitioning from the back into that same configuration. Just notice how you do that. And in that position, just see how far your head can turn towards the left. And that you're facing up towards the ceiling. And just stay at somewhere that's comfortable, because now we're going to explore that type of breathing where you're going to expand your abdomen. And as you expand your abdomen, your chest flattens. So your hands now, your left hand's not on your head anymore, it's just sort of left behind you somewhere. And you're going to think of pushing out your abdomen and flattening your chest. And then you're pulling in your abdomen and expanding it. And notice, just do that slowly to start with, but really just think of that movement and how you can also in the background of attention notice how you're breathing. But just go slowly, really, and letting the abdomen, like it's a balloon inside, it expands and pushes out, and then the chest flattens. And then the opposite occurs, you pull the abdomen in, and you can feel the chest expand. And then make the movement pick up. See if you can make that. I sometimes think of it a bit like pumping action, or from, trying to think of like two chambers, and that one's filling and the other's contracting. So go more quickly, and you can breathe more quickly if you like. So Feldenkrais says, like a auto movement, quite quick. But you're doing this action with the abdomen, or expanding it, contracting it, and your chest is doing the opposite to what your abdomen. You have to continue to do it, yes. But you can notice what if you want the breath to go as quickly as your abdomen, or if you're breathing at a different rate for the movement of your abdomen. Yeah. So you're not holding your breath, you keep breathing as you do the movement. And then make the movement slower again. And when you've done enough, just roll onto your back and take a rest line. So this is only a micro pause on the back. So again, just see what's the easiest way to come back into the position on the right side. So again, you're lying on your right side, your left leg's on the floor in front of your right, your head and chest are turned towards the left. And this time, your left hand is behind your head. And the elbow is opened out towards the left. So it's not cradling the head, but the elbow behind the head is open. There's much, so if you think of the main thing he says in the instruction is that you're facing towards the ceiling. So, if that's difficult for you, you might want to think of where else in your body could you help with. And then in that position again, lift the head and the right leg. And just see if that's become any easier after doing that movement of the abdomen, chest, and the belly. So the first time I did this lesson, as I say, I found it quite challenging. And I thought, oh, how can I make it easier? What do I need to do to get into this twisting position? So I found that if I put something underneath my head, I could turn a little bit more and twist myself. And then I realized for my face to be really pointing up towards the ceiling, if I lifted my left knee a little bit away from the floor, that it twisted the knee. I remember one teacher one time in our training saying something like, how much are you going to, I don't know if you use the word sacrifice, but you do this movement at all expense because that's, or how can you learn from the movement? And then leave it and lie on your backs and take a longer time to lie quietly and to feel the changes a little bit. So, what is giving itself in your body more towards the floor? Is it that you're lying more evenly, or is it that certain parts of the upper back and the ribs on one side are lying more fully than the other? And once more, just find a way to come into that pattern of rolling onto your right side, your left leg is in front, you're facing towards the ceiling, and the left hand is somewhere behind you. Now, it was interesting after lunch how when you're in your groups and you're looking at some of the lessons that you're going to be teaching, and the query of what is Moshe getting at with this instruction? Well, for me, this was one of those instructions. So we'll explore the two possibilities that I came up with. So what Moshe says is, have your arms spread wide as if you're hugging a big tree, as if you're hugging an oak. The elbows are bent and you're hugging an oak. Well, and then he said, you're hugging me. Some of your arms are not wide enough. So then in that position, so it's interesting. So most people have got their arms up into the air. Well, I think everyone has, which I did. So we'll stick with this. And now from here, you're going to lift your head and your shoulders from you. And so you think as you're lifting the head and you're feeling the shoulders come away from the floor and what happens. And again, as much as possible, keep your facing up towards the ceiling. So it's a very different movement if you turn your head. And continue that movement and include in it the lifting of the head. And can you breathe? Are you still breathing easily? Or are you starting to hold your breath as you do the movement? It doesn't need to be a big movement, as you all know. So how can you do this easily? What's happening in your chest? Can you feel your ribs folding as you breathe out? And then take another rest. And once more, roll onto your right side. So 90% of this lesson is lying on your right side. So come back onto your right side. And turn your chest and your head towards the left, so your head's up, you're facing up towards the ceiling. At this time, you're going to bring the right hand behind your head. And again, the elbows out towards the right as much as possible. And now with your right hand, you're going to lift your head from the floor. And as you do that, you can sense what's happening in the sternum. So if it's comfortable, it's put the right hand behind the head. And again, you're continuing to breathe out as you do the movement. And then continue with the head movement and start bringing the right leg into the air. And notice as you do that movement, as you return the head to the floor, what happens to your left shoulder? Is your left shoulder going a little bit more? And next time your head and leg are lifted, pause in that position and bring your left hand to your forehead and roll your head between. And again, think of the lesson, the difference between rolling. So this is the rolling one where you actually, your hand, the palms aren't contouring the head as much so that you turn it, but that your hands are flat and you're rolling the head right. So the palms on the head, and you're just rolling the head left and right. Lovely. And now take another, okay, the side from the position, and fly on your back. And again, you can take the opportunity to tune in and sense how you're breathing, what part of the chest and your ribs are moving, noticing what areas of your back are resting fully on the floor before you come turning back onto the right. So turn, roll once more onto your right. So coming back into that same position, but this time you're going to bring your left arm over the top of your head to hold on to your left hand. The left hand is over your head and you're holding on to your right hand or towards your right ear. So the hand's actually over the head, it's not coming across in front. I think we did this movement maybe in the lesson we did yesterday. So now think of using your hand to bend your head You're tilting your head to the left, sorry, yep. So you're taking the left ear more toward the left shoulder. So you're not lifting the head, but you're just bending it. And your nose is going towards the ceiling. And then you're going to bring your right arm on the floor, at about 45 degrees or so up towards your head. The hands on the floor. So your right arm's on the floor, so that it's out to the side, up towards your head. And with the arm in that position, continue to do that movement of, it's like you're dragging your head with your face is staying up towards the ceiling. Dragging is not a good word, more like sliding your head. You're feeling back and you extend. And you could even imagine that your right arm could lengthen. So think of lengthening your right arm as you do this movement of face, head towards the ceiling, taking your head more towards the left. So it's not particularly lifting the head, but it's leaving it on the plane, and more like a side bending motion might help some of you. And then bring the head, most of the head's on the floor, but remain sort of in this twisted curved position. I think it says in this extreme position. And in this place, go back to that abdominal chest movement. So you're expanding the abdominal as your chest retracts, then you're expanding your chest and pulling your abdomen. And you're just staying in that position. So you're staying quite turned as much as comfortable to the side. And then do that, increase the speed of the movement, really sort of pushing the stomach out and then pulling it in, and expanding the chest and flattening it. And then return everything to the middle and just pause still in that pattern with everything back towards the middle. So you're not going to roll onto your back, you're still on the right side. And you're going to bring your right hand behind and your left hand somewhere behind you. And you're just going to lift your head with the right hand a few more times and feel if the left shoulder has come any more toward the floor after doing the breathing of expanding your abdomen. And just do a few movements and then roll on. Roll. You're now lying on your back. And again, sense what during this part of the lesson all on the one side, what has that done to how your body's contouring to the to the floor. You have certain, it might be differences on the left side and differences on the right. Just observe how it is for you. And then you're going to come up to stand. Just make your way up, standing. And then in standing, turn to your left and right, and see after that, is it easy to turn one way? And he actually says, you know, you can swing your body a little bit to the right and to the left and feel what the differences are. If you turn further, if one side's better organized. And then take a walk and see how it is walking, having done all of these movements on one side. You know, what effect has that had on how you're taking your weight to your legs, how much you perceive more of the room on one side than the other. And then walk back to your mat, because that's part A. We're going to do part B. So come back to lying on your mat. And lie with your legs long, your arms down on by your side as you lie on your back. And close your eyes. So now just sense how you're lying. And as you lie there, you might notice the differences in various parts of your body. But start to equalize the sensation that you feel in your heels and legs. So how can you make the two heels and the two calves, the two parts of your lower leg, the space underneath your knees, how can you start to equalize the sensation there? And in your pelvis. And continue to notice throughout your back, throughout the spine. And if there's anywhere that you feel, say, different along the length of your spine, see if you can reduce that difference so that you feel that your body is lying equally in left to right. And you could notice that within your shoulder blades and also even your face, you know, in both sides of your face to make them feel. And this time you're going to come to lying on your left side. And your right leg is in front of the left leg. Your left arm is out at shoulder level. And your right arm is somewhere towards your arm. So make yourself comfortable to whatever degree you can. If you need something under your head or whatever, do that. And now in this position, you're just going to, again, imagine and think of the movement of lifting the head. So just thinking of lifting the head, and as you do that in your imagination, what do you imagine presses into the floor? And what do you imagine happens with your breath? And as you continue to think of lifting your head, you could add your internal image. How you could also include the lifting of the left leg. And as you imagine that, you can sense the response within your body. And now bring your right hand behind your head and have the right elbow out towards the right. So you're not cradling the head, but the elbow is as much as possible open towards the right. And you're not going to move again. So this is all just imagining the movement. So now you're going to think of lifting the head and the leg. So you're not doing it, you're just thinking it through, of lifting the head and the leg. And thinking that as the head comes into the air, how you can exhale. And continue to think that through. And then leave that image and just start to think of that movement of expanding the abdomen, flattening the chest, and then flattening and pulling the tummy in and expanding the chest. And again, you're thinking that through. And now you're actually going to do the movement of lifting your head and your leg up into the air. You're just going to lift the right leg and your head up into the air. Sorry, left leg, my mistake. Up into the air a few times. And then you're going to, after you've done it once or twice, you're going to leave it in that position and bring your left hand to your forehead. And you're not going to roll your head, you're just going to imagine that it's rolling. And then let that go. And I think just take a brief pause on your back. So he continues on with a few more imaginations, but I think just unwind yourself onto your back briefly, and then we'll finish off with the last few variations. But even now, having just thought those variations through, how has that changed how you're lying? And then come back to lying on the left side. And bring the left hand behind your head. So you turn still toward the ceiling, left hand's behind the head. And here again, you're just thinking of lifting the head with the leg from the floor. And you're not doing it. So what it can be hard not to bring the movement into action. In these process of imagining, it's interesting in terms of learning and how you're already sort of, starting to set off those patterns. So if you think of an athlete or dancers, they'll go through the movement in their mind before they perform. So that's what you do when you're just thinking of the head and left leg lifting. And as you do that in your imagination, do you imagine your right shoulder coming more towards you? And now bring your right arm on the floor up towards your head at about 45 degrees. So the right arm's on the floor up towards your head. On the floor, the right arm's up. Hold on. Okay. And you're bringing your right hand to your left. I got my opposite to what you did on the other side. Okay, my apologies. Okay. So now move your head with your arm as you did that sort of side bending motion towards the right. And then leave it in that direction. And imagine filling your abdomen, expanding it, and then flattening your chest, and expanding the chest, and pulling the tummy in. And notice, can you just imagine it, or there's often a very fine point between the rehearsal and the doing. And then return everything towards the middle. And now bring your right hand behind your head and lift your head and legs from the floor. And feel how that is. And has that, we spent maybe 45 minutes on one side or 30 minutes. And here we spent maybe 5. So how is it on the side? And just do a few movements and then roll onto your back. And so before you come up to standing, notice how the thinking of that last part of the lesson, how has that changed the organisation? And what's happened to how your body's contouring the floor? And then it'll be interesting when you come up to standing and going back to walking and turning. And again, how your thinking has improved or changed what the movement and how you are. So gradually make your way up. And this lesson was called a sharp mental twist. A sharp mental twist. You've got the weekend now to rest and rejuvenate. So come up to standing. But you can also, I mean, there's a lot of twisting, but just think of all your chest and your sternum, how that evokes changes in those areas, and just see how it is now if you turn to your right and left, and if that's different than before you did your imagining. Has one side learned readily from the other side. And then you can just make it a bit lighter and freer. And have a walk around the room, just for yourself to notice as much as you can from the lesson. And then, I was going to say we'll call it a night, but we'll call it a week. So have a good weekend, and we'll see you back on Monday.